Hello, friends. This is a tarot reading for Libra, Sun, Moon, and Rising for the month of February 2019. And I'm using this spread that I've been using for all the other signs for this month. So I'm going to jump into it and start with your significator card and the cards next to it. This is the first spread this month that I've done for a sign where all three cards over here were court cards. And of course this one always is, but the two on the either side. So this would tell me that, like, on some level you're being heavily influenced this month by your parents. Okay, this has got to be like a parental significator thing here. You know, your mother perhaps being more in harmony with you in a sense, but your father kind of leading you in a different direction that maybe you're not as in tune with on some level, because it's swords, right, for both these cards, but cups for the father card here. And so, I mean, on the one hand, this is like a fairly empowering little configuration here. You know, there's probably a good amount of support, but it could also symbolize being like too close to this motherly influence. And this could also be, of course, like a belief system, a church kind of a thing. Like they used to call the church the mother church. At least I think I read that somewhere once. Sounds accurate, so we're going to go with it. But anyway, the point being is that, like, if this has kind of been your sort of comfort zone, your belief system, then this card, you know, more energetically than literally, is sort of an energy that's leading you into kind of like an unknown emotional kind of territory. This could also be some kind of, this may not be your father, because we also have the Father of Swords over here. So, I mean, either way, we do have like a father-mother influence going on, but this could be a person, a lover, or that's maybe older, or just like a wizened person that is sort of pulling you in a more emotional direction, for better or worse. I think it's kind of like the possibility of getting out of your head kind of scenario, if that makes sense. You're getting out of your mind brain understanding of the world and getting more into your heart chest understanding of the world. So maybe that'll become more clear as I delineate the rest of the spread. So past, present, future, we've got the Father of Swords, again, kind of echoing this Mother of Swords theme, like a sort of a very strong, powerful intellect influencing you from the past. This is possibly a high level of mastery over a certain situation too, or a certain subject matter, I should say, a high level of mastery kind of influencing you from the past. But the Six of Swords reversed underneath it, to me, is kind of suggesting that on some level, this experience has been tyrannical. It's like a tyranny of the mind, so to speak. So you haven't had much like pleasure or joy out of all of this work or that you've been doing. Or again, if this is a father figure, there hasn't been much joy in kind of dealing with that person and whatnot, or it's kind of run its course or something like that. I don't know. It's kind of a difficult one to read, I won't lie, but perhaps it'll become clearer as I continue. Judgment in the present situation, you know, kind of sort of dominating for the month of February. Judgment is a card. It's one of those cards where everything becomes exposed, you know? And so, whereas the Sun card, which comes before, is about purification, the Judgment card is about things being exposed for what they are, being assessed for what they are, and, you know, literally being judged. We take that word judgment to mean something intrinsically negative in this day and age. You hear this all the time, like, oh, well, you're judging them, or you're being judgmental, or that's judgmental. Well, in reality, the word judgment just means basically assessment of the situation, right? To judge. Like, if you think of literally a judge in a court, what they do is they, you know, maintain order, and you know, sometimes if there's not a jury, right, they will they will have the final say over the matters. They will assess all of the evidence presented, and they will determine, you know, they will determine what is basically true in that situation, hopefully without personal bias or minimal personal bias. Not too many people can totally rise above personal bias, but it is indeed possible, contrary to what some people believe. So the idea with judgment is not that we're being judged, or that we're in a negative sense, right? Not that we're being unfairly kind of prodded at and poked at, but that things are coming up that need to be assessed and understood for what they are. You can no longer hide, right, within your intellect. You can no longer deny, joy and pleasure and things like that. So the validity of all your ideas and of how happy you really are is perhaps what is sort of being exposed. And, the things that are sort of unreal are going to flee in a sense, right? Because truth or spirit doesn't care about the lies we tell ourselves or the ideologies we weave around ourselves to justify our good and bad behavior or to try to explain the world. It only cares what's true. And so judgment really exposes any secrets or lies in our life, whether it was us having them, keeping them, or other people, and so on. So something is being exposed, something is being revealed. And it's interesting because we have the world reversed underneath it. So in a sense, what's being revealed is some kind of dysfunctionality, because in this context, the world is basically showing, I'm sorry, not the world, the Wheel of Fortune. I get those cards confused actually pretty regularly in a lot of decks, because they do have a very similar underlying meaning in some ways. So forgive me for that. The Wheel of Fortune is upside down. So this is kind of being stuck. It's like a vicious circle. So something that was like kind of woven together, very craftively, very intellectually, is being exposed for what it really is, right? The world is not really, and I know this is the Wheel of Fortune, sorry, but I'm saying the world metaphorically, right? The cycle of life and death and all that stuff. The world is not this like neat, perfect image like the sword here in the Father of Swords, right? It's not this like neat cut, like perfectly rational thing. It's rational from a super intellectual perspective, meaning like, the perspective of like the cosmic mind. Yes, it's still rational, but to our thinking, reasoning mind, in many respects, it becomes irrational, or it appears as irrational. And, that sort of chaotic strangeness is the reality and the beauty of it. So judgment is exposing things as they really are, and things as they really are is not quite what you thought they were, or what you said they were, or what you covered up. I sort of see this here as like kind of a mess. It's like this dream catcher type image is kind of like a mess of things, right? And it almost has this vibe here of being like things are only loosely held together. Like the tyranny of the mind has sort of forced things to come together that aren't naturally meant to be together for more than a little while, right? Because the big thing with the Wheel of Fortune is it exemplifies the turning, the fourfold turnings or cycle of existence. And that means that the Wheel of Fortune is very much about change, although it's a slow and metered and rhythmic change, right? But it should, that rhythm should not be stopped up. It should not be clouded by the mind and the ideas and whatnot. And no one can really fully control it. We can only sort of help it to go in the direction it's meant to go, meaning not obstruct it. So, there's some dissatisfaction here with whatever this tyranny of the mind thing is, with the father, with And this is why you're perhaps over here looking towards something more emotionally fulfilling. Where the Father of Cups leads you, not totally sure. And remember, this is just a general reading, so take it with a grain of salt, please, please. What's interesting is that in the future position after Judgment, we have the World, the actual World card, okay, reversed. And here in this deck, they're even more similar than in many other decks, right? They're both circles. I've talked about the World a lot in other videos, how it signifies like ultimate fulfillment and completion and, sobriety and things like that, and wholeness, whatever. But it's reversed here, which is interesting, which suggests that what's coming to you in the future is kind of like a fulfillment of your ideologies or a fulfillment of your hopes and dreams, but with sort of a catch of like things aren't quite what you thought they would be, right? Things aren't quite what you thought they would be. And the Four of Cups here, being in the advice position of how to approach the future best, the Four of Cups is not really, generally speaking, that wonderful or auspicious of a card. It's fairly middle of the road or neutral. But I think here in the advice section, it's kind of telling you to really assess what is important to you, what is going to give you some degree of emotional stability. Because this over here is not emotional stability. This is chaos as far as I'm concerned. This is very chaotic, right? And you're questing for something more fulfilling on a heart level, right? So this is kind of telling you, in a way, the advice is like, what do you figure out what you need to feel a sense of peace and security, right? Just deal with like the basic essence of your needs, because that's really what the four is here showing. Like the mouse or the rat here, he really doesn't need much. Okay, like I've had to deal with mouse in my apartment here, and they really don't need much. It's extraordinary. They're very intelligent. They adapt to things very quickly. I have no idea how this mouse that I still have is surviving. Like, I don't know where he's finding sustenance. I guess he gets drops of water from the sink or something, but it just doesn't, it makes no sense to me. I mean, maybe he has a stash somewhere that he's living off of, but it's extraordinarily well hidden, and it's probably not that much. So, the mouse takes care of, his essential needs, right? He's not really worried about anything else, but just the basics of life that he needs. And I think that this is what this card's saying in this context. It doesn't always say that, but at the level of emotional needs, right? The level of emotional security and satisfaction and stuff. And, this is not a card where the level of four is not somewhere where we should remain, right? Four is the turning of the wheel, as I've said before. No pun intended, four before. But anyway, but it is a place that we need to deal with at some point, right? We need to put our affairs in order. We need to order things. We need to make things, stable and that sort of thing before we can get to the level 5 and the other levels, so to speak, of consciousness. So that's all. That's fine, So instead of like the world for you, in the sense, whatever you is fulfilled is going to be lacking somehow. It's going to be, things are going to be turned on their head, so to speak. The end in sight is not quite the end you envisioned to whatever this journey is that's here being shown. And so you need to figure out what you really need, okay? And you need to just trust your heart more, basically. And the High Priestess kind of echoes this. I think the High Priestess is really kind of summing up the whole thing and giving us additional advice here. The High Priestess is just saying, just be. Just allow wisdom and things to come into your life. Stop trying to work so hard for them. Stop trying to like hold everything together awkwardly and control your destiny, right? Just listen to the sound of the world, that's where you're going to find your answers. Dream time, the sound of the world, artistic pursuits, stuff that is going to get you out of your head, perhaps, Poetry would be very good with the high priestess. A very powerful way to unlock other dimensions of imagination and things that you've perhaps been a little bit cut off from. Really, this is really about feeling into teachings and what's real, right? A card like this, the Father of Swords, the Mother of Swords, and so on, and the Daughter of Swords, all these swords cards together, it's too much. It's too much ideology and not enough really feeling the wisdom and living the wisdom, right? The High Priestess receives all of the wisdom that is needed for her particular path or life, so to speak. And the fact that we pulled the Daughter of Swords cards for you instead of, the Mother or the Father also suggests that, you know, at least this month, you're kind of in a state of being, um, you're on the plus side, it's a state of seeing things anew, and getting away from this influence and following a new path. But on the other side, it's showing that you're kind of a novice in many ways. You're relying on these external factors to give you some sort of like strength of mind in what you believe, but you're really kind of a novice. You're really not necessarily, this stuff isn't coming from your own experience. It's coming from stuff you've read, stuff people have told you, stuff you've grown up with, but you're largely inexperienced in it. You're not somebody who has like really come into their own and mastered it, if that makes sense. So perhaps it's time to go down another path. But again, right, this is another path where you could become once again stuck, obviously. So but I think overall we don't need to worry about that. I think that this is just this month. This isn't like a reading for years and years to come. This is just sort of the themes of this coming month. So you're going on to this, like, what looks like a potentially very wonderful path where hopefully you're going to figure out what you actually need. It's that simple, really. So I hope this short reading was helpful to you. If so, please hit like, share, subscribe. Check out my website if you want a full-on, like, one-on-one reading and so on. Otherwise, have a great February. All right. See you guys.